Welcome to Weapons Education. Another interview with Police Officer Dave. Dave, thank you so much for driving an hour to come see me and do this video.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. What I want to tell you, Dave, is this. What you didn't realize, we did a series of videos now, I don't know, about 3, 4, or 5 of them, which, by the way, folks, if you go to the playlist and you go to interviews with experts, you'll see all of our interviews on there, and that's part of the playlist. So people do go back and watch our videos that we do together. And what you don't realize, what I was saying is, you have influenced at least 15 people, young men and ladies, between, let's say, the ages of 18 and 22, not knowing what direction to go to in their life, to become law enforcement officers or go into the military, most law enforcement. So let's talk about that first. Okay, we don't really have too much scripted today, but we're just going to kind of talk off the cuff. I got a couple of things in mind what to ask Dave. I know what some of your responses have been in the past, but talk to young people right now about getting into law enforcement if they're, say, 22 years old. Okay,
if you're young, unfortunately with the way the economy is right now, getting into police work is the hardest it's ever been. It's the city government, local government is coming under fire for budget reasons, so the first thing they're cutting is police and fire. So it's going to be really hard. You're going to have to get your foot in the door in other ways. Get into the military, go to college to take criminal justice, get a job in one of the other facets of the police department, whether it be dispatch, community service aid, accident investigator, because a lot of agencies have non-sworn accident investigators. Get your foot in the door in any way you possibly can. That'll help you when they are going to hire a certified police officer. Other than that, you know, and don't get in trouble, keep your nose clean, and hope for the best, because it's going to take time. It's not like it used to be. If people who have gone to college for other things are getting jobs as police officers because there's just no other job to get right now. Unfortunately, we always will need police officers. So just hang in there. You'll get in eventually.
Dave, let's talk about the fact that some police officers, and every profession I understand, there's police officers who are bad apples. We had one here recently, just in the papers and the headlines, I'm sure you've seen it, where the guy was a drug dealer, running a big drug ring for the last 8, 9 years as a cop, and they nailed him, and of course he's going to get a long time in jail. But that's so rare, isn't it? Talk about that.
Yes, less than 1% of the law enforcement agency throughout the nation has had any criminal involvement in anything. And that's less than the government, that's less than Congress, that's less than any industry there is. Less police officers get in trouble with the law than any other industry in the country.
And you guys, I mean, you do your best. There's no law enforcement officer that has an answer to everything and is absolutely perfect and has every law memorized. But you guys, I mean, you put your lives on the line, and you're out there arresting people. You do your best to deal with the issues. Talk about the stress of being on the job.
Well, the job has all kinds of stresses, between the hours, the constantly not being home. You know, when there's a hurricane that comes through, we're not home. We're not home with our families. We're out for 3, 4 days. We don't get to go home when a major hurricane comes in. They call you in, and you can't go home. You sleep at the police station. Your life is nothing but the public. You can go slide by your house and check on your family after it's gone by, but before that you have to board your house up. You have to do everything well in advance of a hurricane, because you're going to get called in and not be able to go home and do those things. So that's something you always have to keep in mind, especially living in South Florida. Any disaster, you're out. Any you know, major incident that occurs in your jurisdiction, you're gone. Long hours.
What about normal, just forget about tragic accidents or natural disasters, just on the job, what kind of stress is it on your marriage, with children, with friends?
A lot of times, a police officer who's married will get a job, he'll become a cop, and the wife can't deal with the fact that he might not come home that night. And a lot of marriages end in divorce because of that. That's something to keep in mind. You want to make sure, if you are going to be a police officer, that your spouse understands that there are risks. There's a lot of risks that come with the job. Not only will he not come home that night, but he could get injured, seriously injured, crippled. It's just endless the amount of things that can happen to you. It is a job where you're dealing with the worst of the worst a lot of times, so you have to just watch your back.
Thank you. One of the questions also is, if they get into law enforcement, what could they expect as far as, I know this is not a good subject, but blood and gore? I mean, you're going to see death, right?
You're going to see all kinds of death. You're going to see death from suicide. You're going to see death from gunshot wounds, stabbings, accidents. You're going to see a lot of injuries, gory injuries. You got to be able to handle that. If you can't handle something like that, then you're looking for the wrong profession.
And how dangerous is it? Because I know you told me about domestic calls are extremely dangerous, and the first dangerous type of call is, we're warm here under the lights.
Yeah.
The first type of call is pulling over a car, right? Let's speak about the dangers.
Yeah, most officers are injured or killed during traffic stops, whether it be from, because you don't know. You see this guy speeding down the road, you don't know that he just robbed a bank 10 minutes before that, or he just robbed a convenience store, he just beat his wife half to death. You don't know that at the time you're walking up on the car. So you have the danger of the suspect, you have the danger of the passengers. You don't know that the passenger of the car has a warrant out for murder, and not even the driver knows that, but the passenger does. And then you also have the general public. For some reason, people see blue lights, they forget to pay attention to the road. You know the term, rubberneckers. And instead of paying attention to where they're going, they get mesmerized by what's happening on the side of the road, and unknowingly to them, they're steering towards it, and they slam into the police car. They slam into the officer. They slam into the suspect's car. There's just so many ways of getting injured on a traffic stop. It's all up to the officer to make sure that he's safe, that he's doing the right things. An officer should never stand between the suspect's car and his own car. Never have the suspect standing in between there, because that's a crunch zone. If his unit gets rear-ended, it's going to squash the two of them right in between there.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is off the cuff, no one knows this, but my father's brother was killed in the line of duty on a traffic stop on the Long Island Expressway. He was ran over by a drunk driver. Just the guy swerved up the road and killed him. And my dad was paralyzed in the line of duty, and he'll be on the channel coincidentally next Saturday. Former sergeant, this is his little badge. We're going to talk about this in a moment. And he can walk now barely, but we'll talk about my dad next week. But cops get injured. It's dangerous. And he didn't even expect to go to work the day he got hurt. He was called in the last second because there was some riots going on, and he had to go in as an emergency. And I was standing there as a young boy, and I remember getting a phone call with my mother. Your husband's, someone jumped off the second-story building, landed on his back, broke his back. That's how quick something happens.
I almost had my back broken. I was standing in the doorway. We were out with a couple kids that had stolen some stuff, and we were talking to them on the side of the road, and I heard a car start up and was coming down towards us. So I went back to the unit, because it was kind of in the middle of the street. I went back to the unit to move it off to the side, and I was standing in the door jamb of the car when the person driving the other vehicle punched it and slammed into the door of the police car, and it crushed me between the door and the roof.
Wow.
Right across my chest.
You're right.
I still have a lump in my back from that. But the person just didn't pay attention. Their windshield was so dirty that they couldn't see that the police car was there in the middle of the road.
So traffic stops are really dangerous. Domestic disputes, that would scare me going in on something like that. Whether it's male or female, someone's drunk in the house, or they've got kitchen knives or guns or something. What's that all about?
Well, the first thing a good police officer is going to do when you end up at a domestic at a house is you're not going to have people in the kitchen. You're going to separate them, and you're going to have them in rooms where there's not a weapon everywhere.
That makes sense.
So you're going to take one outside. You're going to leave the door open so you can hear your partner. You're going to keep them separated, and you're going to keep them away from any potential weapons. That's the first thing that they teach in the academy. The other thing that happens most often is, you go to the domestic, and the wife calls up because he beat the hell out of her, and you go to arrest him, and then she realizes, there goes my breadwinner. And suddenly she doesn't want him to go to jail, and she jumps on the back of one of the officers, and she ends up going to jail also. So yeah, domestics can turn ugly at any moment, and you just got to be aware of that as a good officer.
Okay. Let's change the subject now and get off of blood and gore a little bit and some of the toughness you guys do on the job. And I really want to thank everybody in law enforcement across the whole world for protecting our society and keeping it as a society. I want to thank everybody in the military. I'm sure you do also, Dave. We thank you and everything you've done for 20 years, just recently retired. But let's just talk about, for instance, I'm a law-abiding citizen. You know I have my concealed weapons permit. And you pull me over, and I have this knife on me. This is in my pocket, an espada, say, like this. And I also have, a Glock 29 concealed properly. and I say, yes, officer, my name's Tom, and here's my driver's license, and I think what I would do is put my hands on the steering wheel out of respect to show the officer that I'm in no danger to him, roll the windows down, especially if they're tinted, to make sure he realizes nobody in the back seat. This is just what my dad told me to do. He said, if you're carrying a gun, that's fine. If you be a law-abiding citizen, that's great. But show respect to the officer that there's no danger, there's nobody sitting in the back seat, and that you show him your permit if you feel like it's appropriate. In some states you have to, like Ohio.
Well, no, the proper way, if you get pulled over by a police officer and you have a concealed weapons permit, you're going to hand him your driver's license and your weapons permit, your weapons permit on top of the driver's license when he asks you for your driver's license registration. You want him to know right away that you have a concealed weapons permit. Do not say the word weapon, do not say the word gun, because he might have a partner coming up on the other side of the car who didn't quite get to the window at the same time, and all he hears is the word gun or weapon. Now, the next thing you're going to be doing is staring down the weapons of the police officers. So when you get pulled over, if you are a concealed weapons permit holder, hand him your permit on top of your driver's license, and then let him take control of the situation from there. Every officer is going to do things a little bit different. Some might leave it with you, some might ask you to step out of the car and take control of the firearm during the time of the traffic stop. That's going to be all up to the individual officer. But let him know straight up right away.
A lot of people might disagree on this, excuse me, but they might disagree and say, well, if I'm just getting pulled over for a ticket, why should I tell the officer I have a gun?
Well,
It's,
you can disagree, but
Right.
you lean over to get something out of your glove box and all of a sudden there's your holster hanging out or your gun hanging out, you're going to have his gun in your ear immediately. So, or you might get shot. So to just end that whole possibility, believe me, he's not going to hold that against you, the fact that you're a concealed weapons permit holder. He's actually going to feel a little more comfortable with you because he knows you're not a convicted felon in any way. So let him know.
Okay.
You never know. You might have it on your ankle and your pants are up, you don't realize it's showing, but he's looking for it. You might not be aware it's showing, but he's looking because he wants to make sure that you don't have a weapon, that he's going to go home that night. So it is in your best interest to let him know immediately that you are a concealed weapons permit holder, especially if you're armed.
And what is your feeling on someone who has a concealed weapons permit? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's a positive thing for society?
Well, yes, that's why we have that right. I mean, if you've never been convicted of a crime and you want to carry a concealed weapon and you have a permit for it, please do.
Please, I mean, we help, and we're not trying to be Rambos or act like cops. Pulling your gun is the very last resort, and you should always let law enforcement do their job first. But if you're by yourself and someone tries to carjack you, in a nanosecond, you got to save your life. You think it's okay, of course, correct? And you think all states should be okay, like the states like Illinois and New Jersey. There's some really bad states that have some really bad laws.
Correct.
Why is that so goofy like that?
Well, because each state has its own way of interpreting things. And unfortunately, until the federal government comes down and says this is the way it's going to be everywhere, you're always going to have that issue. We have that issue as police officers, even though we have HR 219.
Which is what?
Which allows a retired or active police officer to carry his gun anywhere in the United States. There are states that still give us a hard time, even though we're trained professionals. Just as trained as their officers are, they still give us a hard time carrying weapons in their jurisdiction.
But you agree we should carry guns if we're legally able to?
If you're legally able to, yeah.
And you don't have a problem with it? If you
there.
pull someone over and they have a gun, you don't have a problem with it if it's legal?
If it's legal and they act accordingly, not at all.
Good, great. You got some coins on the table.
Yeah, I got.
My wife's here, can you please zoom in?
Sure.
I got a couple coins here. These are, it kind of started with the military, the challenge coins. And what the challenge means is, if a bunch of guys are out, and one guy asks you for your coin, if you don't have it, and they're being the challenge, you got to buy the next round of drinks. So it started with the military, kind of carried over into the police agencies also, where...
And what do they say?
This one is it's actually a buddy of mine who works for South Florida Police Department. They made up some that honor the military, so it has an emblem of every military branch on the back.
What's the middle one?
This one has a police officer's badge on the front, and it says the thin blue line, and then it has the oath of honor. And I don't know if anybody's heard this, but it's kind of small here. Let's see. On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I always uphold the Constitution, the community, and the agency I serve, so help me God.
Nice, wonderful.
And then this is for the Police Officers Memorial. For those who don't know, the memorial is in Washington, D.C. It's May 15th of every year, and that's where they honor the officers who were killed that previous year in the line of duty. They're in the process of building a law enforcement museum right across the street from it. It's a very good sight to see if you ever get a chance to go. And then this one is a 9/11 badge, because as you know, this is the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, and this commemorates 10 years, as well as
Stand up.
the shirt I
Hand
have.
out, please. Look at his shirt. We're going to do a special video for 9/11. Dave and I will. Okay, thank you. All right, Dave. Let's see. Some of the other question is, what is the police officer's heart bill?
The heart bill came about because of the stress of the job, all the stresses of the job, you know, the administration, everything that goes along with it. Officers were ended up with heart issues, and sometimes it comes about after retirement. What the heart bill does is either during your career or shortly after you retire, if you should end up with heart-related illness, you can get your full benefits. Instead of retiring at like 75%, you get 80%.
Good.
As if you would if you were hurt in the line of duty.
Now, I'm throwing this at you. I probably might catch you off guard, but I think police officers, the way you put your lives on the line, the way you protect myself, my family, you're out there, you're putting yourself at risk. I think you guys are underpaid, and I don't think your pensions are high enough. That's probably catching you off guard. I have no idea how much money you made. I have no idea what your pension is. But what do you think? I think you guys should be paid more.
I agree. But the problem, and I don't just agree because I was a police officer and I'm retired. I agree because anybody who goes out there, police, fire, who go out there and put their life on the line, they should be paid for it. You got actors and actresses and sports figures. Let's stick with actors and actresses. They go out and they pretend to be a police or a fireman. You know, most of the television shows that you see, if they're not a reality show, they're about a police officer or crime or a detective or something along that line. And that person pretending to be a cop is making 100 times more than what for that episode than what a cop is making for his salary for the year. Now, in this country, we put too much emphasis on entertainment. Entertainment is our #1 export, but it also costs way too much for us. There's no reason why a sports figure makes $17 million in a year and a cop is making 60 grand. He's going home. The worst that can happen to him is, okay, I take that back. Yes, they can get crippled. Occasionally, 1 in 50 years end up dying on the field, but it's slim and none. It's not like police officers where we lose between 50 and 300 a year. Why are they getting paid so much? Unfortunately, right now, everybody is attacking. Every government is attacking police and fire. They're attacking their pensions. They're attacking their pay. They're cutting their existing salaries. They're cutting manpower. We're going about it the wrong way, America. We need to come up with another plan. Instead of these actors and actresses making all of that money, let's create a national fund, a national pension fund for police officers that comes out of all this money that they're making. There's no reason why Charlie Sheen was making
$20 million an episode.
$20 million an episode,
yeah.
And yet a cop who's going out and risking his life is making 50, 60 grand a year. That's just
I can see you're
senseless.
passionate. I can see you're passionate about that. But let's keep the actors out of it, and the sports figures out of it. Let's just compare it to a doctor or a dentist or another professional. I still think you guys are underpaid.
Oh, well, we
Just
are,
forget
but
the
the
actors
problem,
and all that stuff.
but the problem is it's a government job, and government comes from
Or
taxes.
state or city.
Well, they're all considered government, local government or federal government, but it's still a government job, and it's controlled by taxes. The pay comes from taxes. It needs to come from somewhere else. It needs to come from large private industry. It needs to come from the entertainment industry. It needs to come from a deeper pocket. That's where it needs to come from.
Okay, thank you, that was some good input. What was your carry gun? You mentioned this in the past, bring it up again.
My carry gun, toward the latter part of my career, was a Glock 22, and off-duty was a Glock 27. Prior to that, I used to carry a Smith & Wesson 669 and a Model 59.
And what do you carry for concealment now? You carry your...
Glock 27.
Glock 27.
And also a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard.
Great, great. Do you have anything else you want to say while we're on the air?
Nope, that's about it. Just remember 9/11. It's coming up. There's no reason why we only had flags in front of our house right after 9/11. We should have flags in front of our house all the time. So if you don't have one out there, they're cheap. Go out and buy one and put it up.
Thank you. And Dave, one more question, because I forgot to ask you this. What do they teach you in the academy if someone is coming at you with the knife? Is it a 21-foot rule, I believe?
Yeah, it's a 21-foot rule.
Explain that, please.
The 21-foot rule came into play from many years ago. There was a knife situation in New York City where the officers were confronted by a knife-wielding man who had it over his head, and he stormed them. Both, they were detectives, they emptied their guns at him, they hit him like 9 times. He still had the momentum to kill one of the officers, even though he started from like 15 feet away. So the experts came up with the 21-foot rule. You never want to allow anyone with a knife within that 21-foot distance from you. Should he storm you, you take aim, fire, and move. Don't stay in the same place. A person coming to attack you, getting hit by rounds, is not going to be able to maneuver that well. So as you're shooting, just step to the side if you should ever come into a shooting situation like that.
Today's ammo, of course, is so much more powerful than what they used back then before that training incident, but still move after you have to shoot.
But still, it's not like it happens in television when somebody gets shot, they get blown 15 feet back. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, cool. All right, great interview, Dave. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week to do a 9/11 tribute.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know how much we care about all of you. Bye-bye.